Welcome to Whitetail Rendezvous, hosted by Bruce Hutchin. I'm so happy you've joined us today, and you're going to find out a lot about whitetail hunting on the show. This is Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast, episode number 376. Hey, folks, we got a new sponsor. It's called Buckwild Coffee. What's so special about Buckwild Coffee? Well, a gazillion people go to Starbucks every day and drink coffee. Well, why shouldn't Buckwild Coffee offer you light, medium, or dark roast with free shipping? All you have to do is go to whitetailrendezvous.com, go to shop, and order your coffee, and I'll ship it out for free. Hey, thanks so much for visiting Buckwild Coffee. The best brew in the West, the best brew around the campfire, the best brew in the hunting shack, the best brew anywhere. Buckwild Coffee. Get yours today. Hey, we're heading down to Texas today. We're going to catch up with J. Craig Combs. Jay's got a little place down there in Texas, and he makes it work for a lot of things. Makes it work for his family. Makes it work for Texas Parks and Wildlife Land Management Program, and he makes it work for veterans. Craig, for a long time, has spent undue hours with veterans and helping them get through whatever they need to get through, and that's one of the things that is his ranch down there along the Red River helps him do. And so Jay Craig is going to share just what it means to help another man and put a smile on somebody's face that maybe life isn't so good. Plus, he's going to talk about whitetails and how they hunt whitetails down in Texas, and hogs and turkeys and whatever else is running around his ranch. So it's going to be a great show, folks. And welcome, Jay Craig Combs, to Whitetail Rendezvous. It's never too early to think about food plots. Whitetail Rendezvous has an ebook for you. Just simply text 33444 food plot to get your copy. Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. Hey, folks, we're heading down to Texas, Argyle, Texas, if you can believe that. And we're going to talk to J. Craig Combs. Mr. Combs and Colonel Combs and PhD Combs, he's all of that and a lot more. But he's a friend. And he's a friend in a lot of ways, and actually, we're brothers. So having said that, Craig, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Bruce. It's an honor to be a part of it, especially talking about whitetails specifically, but hunting in general. My heartthrob, I grew up doing it. You know, my dad taught me how from a very early age, and so I hope to be hunting until the day I die.
Well, I always say, someplace on the mountains, it's a good place for me. And so, God, if that's time to go home, that's as good a place as any.
Amen. That sounds great.
So anyway, let's start this off, and you got to give some people a little bit of your background, because you've kind of been there, done that, and you got the stripes on the sleeve to say that, both on the theology side and the military side. So let's share spend a couple minutes and kind of give some people background, and then we'll talk about deer leases in Texas.
All right, sounds great. You want me to just proceed?
Yes, sir. Ready, set,
all right,
go.
Here I go. Well, I, of course, was born and raised in Texas. The Lord called me into the ministry from a young age. Was very involved in young life and sorts. But I also had a love for the military. I had 5 uncles that served in the military. One, my dad's next oldest brother was killed in the Battle for Okinawa in April of 1945. In fact, he was killed on the same ridge, Hacksaw Ridge, Kakasoo Ridge, that Desmond Doss won his Medal of Honor for. And my uncle was there and killed a month before Desmond Doss's unit arrived. But anyway, so I had a love for the military, and after I went on to seminary and then started on my PhD in family education, I had started a family and just couldn't see myself as an absentee father and husband, being gone in the military, but I still had that passion for it. So I ended up joining the National Guard as a chaplain and served 16 years traditional or part-time, as a guardsman. Then I got, I'm a late bloomer and a slow learner. I joined late, almost 34 when I raised my right hand. and swore in to uphold the Constitution. And then I got called to combat right after turning to the ripe old age of 50 years old. But anyway, so I did 2 tours in Iraq in my last 9 years in the Guard. I did 26 years total, and I loved being a chaplain. Didn't want to quit, but had to retire. And then God gave me an incredible opportunity to work for the Texas Veterans Commission, still serving God and country and veterans, service members and families. And I basically help them find the resources they need for mental health issues, particularly post-traumatic stress, moral injury, and of course the ongoing fight against suicide. But that's my heartthrob, is living and serving God and country for my veterans that I love dearly, and also my family. I'm married, been married well over 40 years now, or just over 40 years. 4 boys, a daughter, 3 daughters-in-law, and 5 grandkids. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Thank you for that. And while we're talking, I went to the website, and I'm just going to verify this. Sacrifice, Honor, and Courage Combat Warriors. Is that the group you're involved with, sir?
No. Texas Veterans Commission is actually a state-funded.
Okay.
Now, I'm with the Veterans Mental Health Program underneath the Texas Veterans Commission. And one of the programs under us is the Military Veteran Peer Network, and that's sometimes more readily recognized than the Veteran Mental Health Program, because we train peers, veteran peers, to be volunteers to help our veterans with mental health issues and other issues.
Okay, and in the bio, Combat Warriors, is that a group that you allow to come to your ranch, or?
Oh yeah. Any combat warriors. I work specifically right now with Camp Valhalla. Jesse Diana has a nonprofit called Camp Valhalla, and he does weekend retreats for combat warriors. We've already had them out a couple of different times, last August and just earlier this month, and then they'll be out again at the end of April in conjunction with the Adaptive Training Foundation that takes those that have maybe lost a limb or have other physical ailments, and they teach them how to do physical training, that adaptive kind of training, so they can still stay in shape and such and compete when they want.
Okay, and the reason I'm going down this road, because, and correct me if I'm wrong, Craig, 22 veterans of war who served this country are committing suicide every single day. Is that the correct fact?
Yeah, it's somewhere between 20 and 22. 22 was the most popular figure that came out, and then since then it's been revised to 20. But yes, way too many every day are killing themselves as a result of their military service and other issues.
Right. And so Camp Valhalla Veterans Retreat, is that the correct place? It's a 501c3?
Yes. Jesse Diane is the founder here in Dallas. He's in the same building with 22 Kill, who you mentioned. Those guys promote awareness and intervention into the veteran suicide rate. Also, Honor, Courage, and Commitment, which might have been the one you mentioned, is one of their organizations that helps veterans find entrepreneurial training and jobs.
And for what it's worth, very simply, if you get any veterans, if you get any guys that like to talk, like I do, and have a passion for hunting, if they ever need help to launch a podcast, they have my support. I don't know where that's going, and it just dropped in from outer space. No, it didn't.
You got it.
The Holy Spirit just said, "Bruce, open your mouth and say something." So I did. Okay.
Well, I'll take you up on that, and I know I have a guy in Boston already that wants to do an adventure type video podcast, but a little bit different what you're doing. But you never know. I'll remember that, Bruce. Thanks.
Yeah, and just remember that. And I don't do video.
Roger.
Just don't do that. But as far as getting somebody, and working with them and being a co-host until they can fly, you know, um, you know,
Excellent.
there you go. There you go. So, you know, family, faith, hunting. How does that all work? Because I know sometimes my wife looks at me crosswise when July happens and August happens, and then all of a sudden the gear bins start coming out, and I get the calendar out and say, well, and she just goes crossways because we've been married for 46 and a half years, so she knows the signs. I mean,
Yeah. Yes.
So how do you balance it all? How do you balance it all?
Well, with great finesse and very much difficulty. The difficult factor is very high. There's no question. There's some friction there, and it depends on how you handle it. It can be better or worse. One of the things, Bruce, that I have finally figured out and was able to accomplish by God's grace and blessing. I finally was able to create near my hunting property this recreation area that's separate from, but only 3.5 miles from the hunting ground. When I bought the hunting ground, I could barely afford to do that, and then I wanted to build a house on it. Well, I got it so remote because that's what I wanted. I wanted away from any roads and any access, and as remote as possible, but still have electricity and water. And so it really wasn't a good place to build a house. And I finally figured that out. And I guess, as dumb as I am, the Lord finally directed me that, hey, just 3.5 miles away, there was a great piece of property, a piece of ground on a great creek and pasture area with ponds on it. It already had a barn dominium on it, and with the coaxing of my wife, I built a 2-story house next to it. And I did all that so that all of my family can enjoy the outdoors, whether they like to hunt or not. They can at least, if they're non-hunters, they can come to this place and they can shoot at the firing range. They can ride their 4-wheelers. They can fish. They can hike. My son's out there this week on spring break. He just put up a zip line and they're going to build a tree house. And so I think that all of that to say is that you've got to include all of your family. And out of my 5 children, 4 sons and a daughter, 2 of my sons are avid hunters. One is sort of a hunter, part-time hunter, and one just really doesn't like hunting, but he loves the outdoors. He's a skier, snowboarder, hiker. I mean, all of that stuff. Now, my daughter, my wife, that's a whole nother story. I tried early with my daughter. It didn't really take. But now my granddaughter, my oldest granddaughter, absolutely loves to go hunting with her dad and her pops. And so you start young, but you don't force it on them. You let them be who they're going to be. You don't try to make them into the hunter you are, but you try to teach them and ingrain in them the values and appreciation and love for all that. Whether it takes or not, is up to them and between them and God. So I think you just have to be flexible and you have to be willing to say, hey, let them be who they're going to be, but let them know who I am as well. And then, the chips fall where they may.
And thanks for that. And we talked about management, and I know you're part of Texas Parks and Wildlife Land Management Program. What does that mean? Because I've never hunted in Texas. I've been in Texas a lot, but I've never hunted there. So what does that mean for somebody who loves to hunt whitetails?
Right. Well, Texas is known for being, a whitetail state. It's always up there in the top 5, I think, probably somewhere. But it's also a very, 90%, I think, privately owned lands. There are very few public lands, which is frustrating to many, and understandably so. But the Texas Parks and Wildlife has a wildlife management program that they partner with ranch and landowners Typically, you have to have at least 1,000 acres to be a part of the land management program, but they assign a biologist to you, a wildlife biologist, and they basically come to your property and inspect it and ask you, your hopes and dreams and desires for the place and whether you're willing to go along with their stipulations. And then if you are, you sign an agreement. And basically, there's like 3 stages. It typically happens over 3 years and then beyond. Level one, you basically go to their or follow their management principles, which is try to develop food sources, try to protect the habitat. You do deer surveys before the season, both by trail cameras with piles of corn or feed over a 2-week period, by site surveys. If you're able to, night spotlighting and aerial, but we typically aren't able to do that. So you do a deer survey and come up with the buck to doe ratio, and then based on that analysis, the biologist gives you a harvest quota for that season. And so we've had anywhere from 3 bucks and 4 does for the season as a harvest quota. To one season, we had a high number of does. We had like 14 does and 5 bucks as a quota. And mind you, we don't have 1,000 acres. We only have 500 acres of hunting ground, but we're right on the Red River, and so we have a mile of river frontage, no fencing, and we're in bottomlands with a creek that runs all the way across our property as well. So east and west fences are almost non-existent. And we have access to 100 to 200 other acres adjacent to it. So they kind of made an exception for us. But anyway, that's what they do. We do a survey. They give us the harvest quota, and then progressively, as we put in food plots and do these particular expectations, then by the 3rd year they extend our season. So instead of a October bow season and November, December rifle season, we can hunt from the first weekend in October through the last weekend in February, and that's so that we can most effectively and assuredly meet our harvest quota and meet the standards that they come up with.
That's a mouthful.
Yes, it is.
Okay, to the listeners, I got listeners all over North America. So down in Texas, one thing I heard, you got to have 1,000 acres, but there's some wiggle room there.
Yes.
Do they assign a biologist and a land manager from the state parks and wildlife to work with you? Is that what they do?
Yes, they assign a wildlife biologist. Now he's very busy. They have regions, and we've seen our biologist a couple of times since we started this in 2007, but we are in frequent contact with him by phone or by email mostly. When you take care of business and you do turn in reports and surveys and things like they ask, they really pretty much leave you alone, and it's a really a good fit for us because we have family that can enjoy this place and have bought into the management concept, and not shooting a buck until he's aged at least 4.5, if not 5.5 or more. And it's been very instructive and very good for our family to learn the management process.
Whitetail Rendezvous is pleased to announce a partnership with GoHunt.com. Who's GoHunt.com? Well, if you're a DIY hunter, you need the information at GoHunt.com/insider. Why? Because it provides 4,200 profiles, every unit, every species, and every season. Furthermore, they give in-depth analysis, interactive maps, unit access, and seasonal trends. Draws are very important, and they give you the most accurate information in the business. All this is available when you go to GoHunt.com/insider. Make sure you use promo code WR when you join Insider. you'll get a $50 gift card for GoHunt.com Gear Shop. All in all, if you're hunting out west in 2018, GoHunt.com Insider is where you need to be to get all the research information. When you use promo code WR, Whitetail Rendezvous receives a small commission from GoHunt.com. You talk about management, and we have QGMA, and I love the guys down there, Kip Adams and Thomas Lindsay and the other my other friends down there. And listeners, no matter where you are, take advantage of what your state DNR, Department of Wildlife, Parks and Wildlife, whatever they call your area, call them up and get involved. Because
absolutely,
and I've said this before on the show, and I'm going to keep saying it. If you're not involved in the management of your elk, your deer, your crickets, your quail, it doesn't matter. Whatever you love, get involved, and don't be one of those person that buys your license and says, "Well, they should do this and should do that." You should do this, and you should
absolutely
do that, and you'd be surprised that how soon you can get a seat at the table. I raised my hand in Colorado 10 years ago, and I went through a couple of chairs, and I had a seat at the table with the commissioners. Not because I'm smart, not because I have a whole heck of a lot of money, because I'm neither of those, but I gave a rip. I cared, and they knew I cared, and I wanted to make a difference. And so just call the guy up. Call the local warden, the local game manager, whatever they call them in your state, and say, "Hey, let's have a cup of coffee," because I want to talk about a couple of things, and go
absolutely.
talk to them. And you'd be surprised. You'd be flat surprised of the impact that you can have, because few people do it. And as a regional rep down here in the southeast region of Colorado, I was surprised how many phone calls I didn't get, because initially I thought I was going to get cream with phone calls, and there were very few. And yet people will, moan, whine, call it what you want about, well, they're not doing this and not doing that. Well, pony up, get her done, guys and gals.
Right. Well, and you have to be educated, informed, and involved, because, as you know, our sport and our lifestyle is under attack. And if we're not educated, informed, and involved, it can very easily be chipped away at, and it would be a sad day. We lost it.
Well, that comes back to the hunting tradition. Nice segue, Craig.
Amen.
Your father and you and your uncles, and you got a family place now that people can come and just enjoy nature. And I know that you invite veterans to your land along the Red River, and let them enjoy what's there. So let's talk about that, and why you do it, how you do it, and if somebody wants to get involved or say, "Hey, sponsor somebody," I'm trying to find the word, just get in touch with you. How would they do that?
Well, they can email me. I have a Gmail account that I am glad to share. It's my full name with dots, joe.craig.combs. That's joe.craig.combs And I work with veterans of all kinds, and we specifically have teamed up with Camp Valhalla because it's made it so easy. The first three years in a row that I did it before I deployed to Iraq my second time, my family and I just did it, and we hosted the whole thing by ourselves and footed the bill and all of that, and so it was very taxing. But partnering with a 501c3 like Camp Valhalla here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, they have all the funding, and they all we do is provide the place and the guidelines, what they can and can't do, and some supervision. And man, they pony up and bring their guys and their help, and they put a show on. Man, they bring their weapons. They have a Class 3 licensed guy that comes out with fully auto weapons and suppressors and sniper rifles, and then they also brought a guy out, a hog hunter that had thermal scopes on his ARs, and they were able to take some hogs at night with their thermal scopes. But anyway, that's the best way is to get, and in any state they've got these 501c3s that are helping veterans. Heroes on the Water is one. I don't know. I can't start to name all of them, but they're all over the U.S. And they can Google veterans outdoor retreats or veterans outdoors or whatever and find one in their local area, I bet.
Let's talk about when somebody comes to the land, Camp Valhalla brings people down, and guys are having fun when you're sitting around the campfire or the kitchen table, the big kitchen table. And what difference does just you opening up the gate and letting those guys in? What difference do you see in their eyes?
I'm telling you, Bruce. I'm telling you, Bruce. To me, it's the importance of God's creation and experiencing God's creation. There's something about, and I experienced it early. In fact, that's how I came to know the Lord, was through a Christian camp back when I was 12 years old. And, the outdoors does that. And when you bring these guys that have gone through so much, most of the guys we have there are either wounded warriors or they're at least combat experienced warriors. And so they may have invisible wounds, or they just may have, tough experiences and they're dealing with them. But there's something about just letting the guard down and sitting around the fire, or sitting in a blind together, or, lying prone, firing a rifle together, or doing a pistol range together, that just, unloads, helps them unload. And we've had several testimonies of these guys that tell us early on, we had them bring their family members. And, one guy came with his daughter, and they had been estranged and, very aloof when they came. And by the time they left, she was sitting there almost in his lap, and he hugged me when he left, and he said, "Craig, I can never thank you enough for what this did for us." And the last one, guy from Boston came down, was struggling with family issues and faith issues. And when he left, he said, "Man, I've got to get back home and get things together." And we've been Facebook friends ever since, and it's just had an incredible impact. So, I mean, there's just something about all of that brings the importance of or what is important in life, which is understanding who we are and who we are in light of God, and what He has for us and how much He loves us.
Well said. And I had the situation to walk a few miles with a couple of guys, and one guy did well and the other guy didn't do so well. But when you think of that, and yeah, I'm a little emotional about this because it's really simple. You just extend a hand and you make a difference. Take the guy to the coffee shop, take the gal to the coffee shop, say, "Hey, let's meet at the park. Can I buy a hamburger?" It's no big deal, folks. And if you, every day, here's a challenge: every day, just say to one person in uniform, "Thank you for your service." But find that veteran. They're easy to find because they won't look you in the eye. Their head's down. They've got the crap beat out of them by life, and they're just looking for a friend. And so many people walk by them, and I'm guilty because I'm thinking I'm going, but just take one person, at least smile at them, and say good day. It'll make a difference, and you don't know what's spinning in that person's mind. You just flat don't. I know this is way off whitetail, but this is, as I always say, it's real people in real places, and this is the way the show's going. And it's our responsibility, you and mine, everybody listen to this show, just make a difference, just once a day. And the change, if everybody did that, who listened to the show and then got one of their buddies to do it, it would make a huge difference in thousands of men and women's life.
Amen. Thanks for that, Bruce.
Yeah. All right. Let's get back to whitetail hunting. Since I've never hunted deer in Texas, all I heard is you sit in a box blind and the feeder goes off, and the hogs and the turkeys come in, and then once in a while a buck will come in and you shoot the buck, or you shoot the management buck, the coal buck, and shoot some does. And welcome to hunting in Texas. No, tell me I'm wrong. Come on, man.
Well, you're not completely wrong. It depends on what ranch you're on, or what public hunting ground you're on or whatever, you can make it what you want. I personally fell in love with bow hunting many years ago, and as you know, it's a whole different ball game. I mean, everything is a potential mistake, or everything is a potential thing that will cause you not to have that opportunity on that buck of a lifetime or whatever. Um, and yet, my dad is a dyed in the wool box blind rifle hunter, and it was hard to convince him the value of this management and aging the deer before you shoot them and that kind of thing. But he sees the results and appreciates all the hard work we put in it and the thought. But so all that to say is you still have to do the things that work to be able to bag that buck of a lifetime and not just shoot every 2.5-year-old you see. And that's what management and conservation is all about, and the thrill of hunting. That's why they call it hunting, not killing, as we've all heard. So it does take effort. You have to pattern the deer. You have to make sure you have your scent controlled. Make sure you're not in the area tramping through their bedding and living areas and all those things. So as you can imagine, with what I've got going with all the family and extra guests on the property, I'm constantly aware of and am careful of how that affects the patterns of the deer, and we don't want to run them off our property onto somebody else's. And so it's it just depends on the hunter and the land and what they love or don't love to do.
Let's talk about mending fences with neighbors, or just getting to know your neighbors. How is that? How important is that down in Texas?
Well, it's hugely important. It was it was even more important in Oklahoma. My first deer property I bought was in southeastern Oklahoma, because at the time I couldn't afford the prices of land in Texas, and so I thought that was a bright idea. But to be an absentee landowner out of state, in the next state over, in which they don't respect property boundaries or rights, I learned a hard lesson. But even there, it's extremely important to be a good neighbor and to get to know your neighbors, because they can make or break, the success of your property. And even on a big spread, there are still boundaries, and you have to, be a good neighbor and get to know your neighbors so that you understand where each other's coming from. Now, Texas is a different story. We still have poaching, yes, and we have experienced some of that. But it's extremely important to get to know the people in your area, and to know your game warden and your rural law enforcement. I mean, that's always a crucial part, is that you are, a team player with the law enforcement in your area, and that will pay great dividends when you do have laws that are broken by neighbors or by just poachers from somewhere else.
I had a sheep hunt in August, and I was hunting with a crossbow. I hunt with a crossbow because I blew out my shoulder.
Roger, me too.
I was the only guy. There was 10 tags in this one area, and so I sat down and told each of the warden, there was one on the east side, one on the west side, and said, "Okay, here's my tag." We met at the coffee shop, and I said, "Here's my tag. Here's my truck." And somebody is going to call in and say there's a guy hunting with a crossbow, because sheep, there's a lot of sheep, but they're all in one place. People know where sheep are. I mean,
Roger.
It sounds weird, but you know the general area. It's 5 square miles, but still the general area. And so I just set it up, and each one of those guys thanked me, because they took a picture of my license, and they had a picture of my truck, and I said, you're going to get a call, and somebody's going to be all bent out of shape. And so you go, "Yeah, that's Bruce." They'll go, "What? You already know the guy?" "Yeah, I already ran him. I know who he is."
That's the way to do it.
But that's exactly it. And folks, if you're not doing that, I'm kind of on folks, let's be smart out there, but we are under attack. And the more you do that, then you make a friend of your local game manager. And then I'm not saying he's going to cut you any slack. Don't go out and violate, be ethical,
Right.
do everything right. But he knows he's got a friend, and you never know when that's going to benefit both of you. So,
Absolutely.
enough of that and talking about that. So when you pay it forward and teaching kids and growing deer, what are the best techniques that you found for growing and managing healthy bucks, pardon me, on your property?
Well, it's not an easy process. It is very time consuming. It is very expensive, as probably most of your listeners already understand. But um, and especially in a low fence, I'm all about free chase. I know in Texas they have a lot of high fence, a lot of great ranches that have incredible animals in these high fenced areas, but that's just not my game, and so it makes it all the more difficult that uh, food plots are the way to go. I have a protein mineral feeder as well at a central location that I've used to some effect as well. But it's all monetarily consuming and time consuming, and it just depends on how much money you have, how much time you have, how much help you have as to how well that does. There have been several years that I've done really well with my food plots. Other years have done really poorly. Um, but overall, with the mineral feeder and the food plots, we have had an effect. Our deer, the bucks, their antlers, we have seen improvement in the mass and in the size. Of course, genetics is still all a part of that, and the nutrition from season to season, depending on the weather and the rains and that kind of thing. All those things your listeners are aware of, but there's just so many variables. But it's incredibly rewarding though when you put in. I remember one weekend I had a 3-day weekend, and I think I even took off the next extra day so I could get all my food plots plowed and seeded and fertilized and all done all by myself with my little John Deere tractor. And that season that we had the best food plots, and I just the rest of the season into the winter, I just sat there with this incredible grin and a sense of accomplishment that it had come through, and the deer benefited from it, and so did we.
And thanks for that, because it takes time. It takes a couple of bucks, but it's for the love, the love of the game, if you want to say it that way, or the respect for the animals. But it's creating an adventure, whether it's 100 acres or 1,000 acres or 10,000 acres. It's the adventure that you create for people, whoever they are, when they come onto your property and their guests, that they'll leave with, whether or not they get any game or not.
Yeah.
They're still in a place that's been managed well, and they have the opportunity to see some game. Not that every place is game rich, because they're not, but there's enough game by your toil and trouble and investment that you're doing a great job for the people who are able to come and visit.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of having a place where you have to control the amount of deer that are taken, but you know what? You have hogs that we're trying to control that are a horrible nuisance. We have coyotes that are way too many that need to be thinned out. Bobcats, of course we have a good crop of turkeys. So that's the beauty of a property like this, is that you can use it year round if you manage it right, and still not have a detrimental effect on the wildlife population. In fact, an improvement on the wildlife.
And thanks for that. This has really been, fun. We touched on a lot of things, folks, today that are intertwined in Craig's life and my life. And I just want to thank you for folks for listening through and getting a little different perspective. Sometimes we talk nothing about whitetails and tips and techniques and lessons learned, but this is important. Interview for me, because of the people that you can affect every single day. So I'll just hush on that. Craig, last thoughts?
Well, thank you, Bruce, for what you do. I really do appreciate someone out there that's still getting after it, late in life to share their passion with others, because it's an important part of life to enjoy God's creation and to share that with the people we love in our lives, and to constantly be learning and improving, and not only improving ourselves personally, but being able to improve the habitat and the sport around us, so that we can share that with so many others. And so I really thank you, and I thank your listeners for being a part of this great experience we call hunting and outdoors.
So on behalf of thousands of listeners across North America, and every day it's my listenership is growing because of people like you, Craig, sharing on the show, and I just I can't wait till we're down there sitting and talking around the campfire. It'll be a fun thing. So on behalf of all my listeners and friends and family, thanks so much for being a special guest on Whitetail Rendezvous.
Good to be here.
Hey, folks, we got a new sponsor. It's called Buckwild Coffee. What's so special about Buckwild Coffee? Well, a gazillion people go to Starbucks every day and drink coffee. Well, why shouldn't Buckwild Coffee offer you light, medium, or dark roast with free shipping? All you have to do is go to whitetailrendezvous.com, go to shop, and order your coffee, and I'll ship it out for free. Hey, thanks so much for visiting Buckwild Coffee. The best brew in the West, the best brew around the campfire, the best brew in the hunting shack, the best brew anywhere. Buckwild Coffee. Get yours today. Stay tuned for the next episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. We're heading out to Massachusetts, and we're going to change it up a little bit with Dan Wolf. What is Dan Wolf? He's a suburban DIY buck hunter, and the stories he's going to tell are off the charts. Plus, he's the creator of Tickies. What is Tickies? Well, there's a huge problem with ticks out east, and he's got a solution for it. Stay tuned. It's going to be a fun show.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and succeed.